We're recording a wonderful interview here, and you're going to enjoy it, audience, wherever you are around the world. We're talking to two wonderful friends of Irish traditional music, of Irish culture, and of course, more importantly, Cavan culture. Friends of the tradition, friends that are part of the tradition because what they're involved in is making things happen. Right beside me is the wonderful Chris Murray, and beside that is beautiful wife Carlotta Hester. They're from America, far way away for us in Cavan, but through context, through music, song and dance, through sharing our love, and that love of culture, we managed to build a friendship. And it's a wonderful, strong friendship that has developed into 2020, delivering a wonderful product, the lovely drawings of Carlotta Hester, called the Pure Drop. And anyone involved in traditional Irish music, in anything to do with language or culture, understands what the Pure Drop means. Chris will explain it in the context of what he does, but more importantly, we're going to have a chance to hear their story, all the way from Washington. Is that right, Chris?
That's right, Martin. Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Here to County Cavan.
It's been quite a journey for Carlotta and I, Martin, and thank you. I think it's very important, the work you're doing, documenting important things regarding the tradition, and so thanks for getting this story down. But, I was fortunate to become curious about where did my family come from. And I was born in the Bronx in New York City. My father was born in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan on 9th Avenue and 50th Street. And his father was Matthew Murray from Lower Lavie in Stradone. And so I never knew my grandfather because he died when my dad was only 9 years old. And the man from Cavan, Matthew Murray from Lower Lavie, he came to New York City when he was about 15 years old. And at some point he met a woman from Kerry named Mary Mansell, and a beautiful woman, and who I did get to know. She lived to a good old life and lived in my home in the Bronx when I was a little boy for a couple of years. And so anyway, Matthew Murray from Cavan met Mary Mansell from Brandon Bay, Kilcumin, and they got married. And in 1914, my father was born on a cold winter's night, December 27th, 1914, just before 1916, Easter. So it's that kind of context. And so I was curious. I never knew the man, and my father, when his father died, he had 5 other brothers and sisters, and he was the second oldest at the age of 9. And his poor mother was left a widow, who, by the way, only spoke Irish when she came to America. And she ended up working at Holy Name Parish on 98th Street in New York, where they moved from Hell's Kitchen up to 98th Street, which was very much an Irish neighborhood in New York City, and Holy Name Church. That was the center of activities there. And so I wanted to, who was this man? And my dad was so busy trying to make a living, and you can imagine 5 kids, 6 kids. His mother's a widower and is a maid for the Catholic Church up there on 98th Street. So he had to work hard, and he became very successful and did quite well, and well educated, and got all his 6 children, I'm one of 6, educated. But I never knew who my grandfather was, and I think that was at the core of my coming to Ireland. And as I wanted to say, my father never had a chance to come home. Yeah. And so sometimes things skip a generation, So I came to County Cavan with Carlotta and my son David Murray, who was about 11 or 12 years old at the time. He's now 37 with 2 children of his own. And so we arrived in Cavan. It was dark. I never forget, it was dark and cold, and I never even had heard of County Cavan. Most Yanks have heard of Kerry or Cork or Dublin, And I got up here, but I knew there was on the Dublin Road, a Murray B&B. And I went to that place and found Mary Murray and Pat Murray, who is a cousin of mine, Pat Murray. And they sent us over to the farm at Lower Lavie, where Rose Murray, Granny Rose, was. And I walked in there one morning, unannounced, with Carlotta
and David
and my son. and said, "Hi, I'm Chris Murray, and my grandfather was born here, and I wanted to say hello." And Granny Rose was so wonderful, Martin. She was sitting there by the stove, and she made us. I'll never forget. Only time in Ireland, you go to Irish home, it's a lovely tradition to be offered a drink of something, and she had hot water with sugar and whiskey.
Lovely.
And she
In a
doesn't
glass.
in a glass,
Lovely.
and she didn't touch a drop herself, but we partook, and that was the beginning of coming home. And I found the house, and I was fascinated by it. And wouldn't you know, there's a holy well at the Murray home there, bordering the Cusack and Murray homes, the St. Dimphna's well. And I was charmed by this place. I had never been to a holy well. It was quite a beautiful spot. And it proved to be an important place in our lives later on, because I actually proposed to Carlotta there about 10 years later. And we ended up getting married there the year after that. So here we are at a holy well, et cetera, et cetera. But so that's how we came back to Ireland. And we were so fascinated. We kept coming back every year. In the first year, we were only here 1 or 2 nights. The second year, maybe 2 or 3. Then the third year, maybe 4 or 5. And then we finally started renting a home in Cavan and Red Hills first, and various places, and got to know everybody. But I love music. Carlotta loves music too. And one day, I think our second visit ever, when we were here just 2 to 3 days, would have been about 25 years ago. You might know better actually how many years ago it was. But one day we walked in, out of the blue, no plan, just walked into this place called the Farnham Arms. And it was right there on the street, so we just went in and, what's going on here? And there was this amazing session going on. And I was blown away. I've been in several bands myself, rock and roll bands, but we also did folk music and things like that, which in America would be called traditional music. And I walked in, and there was this session going on that was absolutely mind-blowing. Darren Maloney, Trevor Burry, Mickey McDonald, Finton McManus, and Alan McGuire, and that great guy from the Mama's Boys, Pat McManus.
Seamus Fay, remember to coming in?
Seamus was there, but he wasn't in that original band that was
And of
going.
course with you, Martin.
That's right, Carlotta, and Martin Donohoe. And so, and for some reason, Martin, you were very kind, and you said, hey, how are you and stuff. But as the story goes, and it's a true story, Carlotta, the following summer, we came back again, and we had met you that first time, and you welcomed us there. But we came for the set, and you were performing with everyone. It was great, and totally absorbed in the music. It was at such a high level, and such great improvisation going on in these tunes that were obviously very standard and important tunes in the history of traditional music. But it was interesting how everybody would approach it, and how different instrumentation would approach it as well, because you could do one tune, could have been a Sean No singer, and yet all you guys could have also been doing the same tune. Anyway, Carlotta, just to amuse herself, I think, took out her pencil. Carlotta's an accomplished artist and a highly regarded art teacher in Washington, D.C. And she just took out a brown paper bag that she had saved because she had bought something in it, some little trinket or something, and she had it in her bag, and she pulled it up, and she started drawing you. And I'll never forget it. And the drawing really came out quite well. And then at the end of that session, you came over and greeted us and said hello, and I showed you the drawing, and Carlotta was there sitting with me, and you encouraged, you enjoyed the drawing, and it was quite a good depiction. We're on the hunt for that actual original drawing. I'm not sure where that first one is, but I think we might even have it in the archive somewhere. But anyway,
in Penn, I think.
It was in Penn, that's right. And then you said, this is terrific, come back to the next session. And so every Wednesday night, those amazing sessions in the Farnham's Arms, and we started coming to Cavan for a month at first, after those first visits for a few days, and then we started coming for 5 weeks, then 6 weeks. So now we come for the whole summer, and we'd go to every Wednesday night. We would never miss it, and it was just an amazing. We got exposed in the best possible way to traditional Irish music because it was here in this place where my family was from. These were my own roots. And so I think, apart from loving music and apart from loving what I was hearing, I was eager to embrace it too as part of a culture that I wanted to know about and that I wanted to find out more about. And that certainly happened to us. And and then what happened is we'd come back to the next session. I enjoyed so much your appreciation of Carlotta's wonderful portrait of you while you were performing. And I think the next year I said, why don't you bring some
pads,
drawing pads, and why don't you just sit and do some more of this, a little more formally. And so Carlotta did. She brought some great pads, and we'd start going to all the sessions, and she would just start drawing, and then you'd invite us to a session maybe.
All over the place.
All over Cavan.
Radio Land.
We've even gone up to Enniskillen to see you in Tyrone.
You met the great Ben Lennon, who passed away. The great Ben.
Yes.
Remember, you just travelled over the Drumshamble for that.
Was that what you call one of the summer schools?
The Joe Mooney Summer School, remember that? He loved meeting you that time, the late great Ben. And of course, you went to Oma. Wonderful Claire McDermott was dancing. So, and that journey that we're listening to about, which seems very relaxed, it involved years of research from your half, because you had a wonderful personality, the pair of yous, to make people want to meet you. And it's a rare gift to have that. People say, how are you doing? Good luck. But Finta McManus always kept in contact, Pat McManus, Trevor, loved Carlotta's work, and there was people that recognised your genuineness, which is very important. So you can understand how, it was easy to bring you to places because everybody looked forward to you.
And Martin, we got to know those personalities.
And love them.
And so you can imagine, here I'm getting to become a friend with this guy named Fintan McManus. Here we're becoming friends with this guy, Trevor Brewery, is playing the butter, and every one of them. Seamus Fay and the lilting, and then...
We'd be sad, remember then when you said be going at the end of the year, we'd be saying, this is your last Wednesday. And would we get another session in Thursday night before you go?
That's right.
Yeah, Aoife Murray, of course.
And those sessions nurtured us, Martin. They literally nurtured us artistically and culturally and in me, in a deeply personal way, as a big part of my returning home and finding those roots. Because to me, the traditional Irish music, it's the essence of Irish culture for me. It's because it's so lively and it's so, there's a reason music is so huge in our culture, whether it's Lady Gaga or Taylor Swift or Elvis Presley or the Beatles. It's sound vibration, and it goes right in your ear and gets right to your soul. And so if you want to find the soul of Ireland, I'd encourage someone, investigate traditional Irish music. You will find the soul of Ireland. And so we started approaching this a little more formally, and to come and Carlotta drawing everywhere we'd go just for the pleasure of it. And if I can say...
capture the energy, because it was the playing, and so they'd be moving and going this way and that way. Nobody was stopping and posing for me, so I just was capturing the energy of the music. But then it was later.
And so then we started hearing about the fla. The All-Ireland fla. I didn't even know what a fla was. I'd never heard the word. And then I'd hear you talking about, the fla from, 2000, whatever the year was, and fla, and you'd say, it's this festival. So all of a sudden I became very excited about this idea of festivals of traditional Irish music, because for us it was mostly your sessions on Wednesday nights at the Farnham or going to other sessions.
The Widow Bar.
That you were the widow, but then you started telling me about the fla, and then I started hearing that, wow, maybe the fla might come to Cavan someday. And then we come over back home one summer and find out Cavan is strongly in contention for the fla. And then we find out the fla's coming to Cavan in 2010. We decided at that point, I said, why don't we go document the fla?
Well, it was Martin, actually. We had a coffee with Martin. And Martin said, you know what, why don't you actually, this is the first time it became formal, why don't you record this? And so we decided we would. So the following year, we saw Martin Gaffney, we got press passes. I brought the supply of art materials so it'd all be the same. And before the fla started, we went to that great session at the Mart where there's sold the animals and
Oh, right, the
these
marks,
early
yeah.
sessions even before the Fleadh just to get warmed up. So we started just really.
But it was wonderful for us to be knowing that, you know, because Martin Gaffney, who you mentioned there, you know, he'd be an artist as well as visual art, as well as a musician. And he loved the thoughts of what we were talking about, that there was going to be this record of musicians. And of course, the All-Ireland Fleadh, for visitors listening, is 300,000 people in our time attended in Cavan over, you know, a week-long event in August, Fleadh Comhairle. And of course, the fact we never knew where Carlotta was, because she had access all area, herself and Chris, and they would arrive at a concert or a recital or maybe a session, and all over the period of time we mightn't meet for a whole day, and I'd see her somewhere and she'd be scribbling away, and Chris would be overlooking, keeping
And
an eye on it.
perhaps my contribution, Martin, was I would record who she was drawing, what the date was, what the venue was, the town hall, Skull Lakeshire, whatever, and where the artist was from, the musical artist was from. That turned out to be very, very important, because it wasn't just an anonymous drawing of someone then. Oh, we actually knew who every person was, where they came from and what they were doing. And Carlotta really got going. In fact, we were renting a house in Red Hills at the time, and it was so exciting and so engaging. We wouldn't even get home until 2:30 in the morning.
Later.
And it was 3, because somehow sessions would keep going, and when we got home, there was a dining room in the house we rented. I called it the map room, because it was a big table. We didn't ever use it as a dining room, but we put maps. And another part of the quest is I always had these great maps of Cavan and of Killikeen and all these places, because I was always looking to see where we were. But we'd come home and Carlotta might have done 12, 13 drawings that day and evening, and we'd put them out on the table, and we'd sort of pick the best ones.
Well, we remembered, we'd make sure to write everything down.
And write down who and where and all that stuff. So all of a sudden we realized we were in a project, and just for 2010 would have been good enough. But then the miracle, Cavan did such a good job. You did such a good job. Everybody in Cavan, the volunteers, all the people we would see working hard. So many volunteers, I remember everybody. My friend Dermot Walsh, and then kids of parents, and just everybody was pitching in. It was the biggest sense of community. People talk about community, diversity, things like that. There was such a sense of community in Cavan during those Fleadhs. And 2011 came, and 2012 came, 3 Fleadhs in a row. So during that period of time, Carlotta continued doing it for all three Fleadhs, and did over 200 drawings.
Wow,
And it was quite, and as she said at one point, my pen was like a camera, because I have to say, they were live action drawings. Not one drawing was retouched later or any work done from a photo. If you were playing, or your daughter Zoran was playing on her concertina a song, and you had 3 minutes on that song, Carlotta would do it in that 3 minutes, and that was it. So that's why her pen was like a camera, you know. So they're live action drawings, and so it became very exciting. And then, as she mentioned, Martin Gaffney, at your suggestion, you said, go see Martin Gaffney. And we went, he gave us these press passes. We went from a street corner session to
the Dome. He's around the
Dome. One of the best feats, I thought, or not feats, is we went to Skull Lakeshire. And I remember meeting Thomas Maloney, who the day before the Fleadh was beginning, and they were setting up in the Dome area, their Skull Lakeshire. We didn't know what Skull Lakeshire was, but then we heard it was a school. Carlotta being a school teacher, I knew she'd be interested. I was interested. And we started speaking to Thomas Maloney, and he explained how there were competitions coming up, and they learn for a week, and then they have the competitions. And it really occurred to me, Martin, I thought, this is really the heart of the Fleadh in a way, because it's bringing the tradition to young musical artists, and it's the future of traditional Irish music was in Skull Lakeshire, from what I could see. And I said to your man, Thomas Maloney, I remember saying to him, it seems to me this is the heart of the Fleadh, Skull Lakeshire. And I'll never forget, he turned to me, he goes, it is, Chris. It's the pure drop from the well of Irish music. And that phrase, the pure drop, later on I found out there was a TV show called The Pure Drop, but we had never heard such a phrase, and it just rung with me, the pure drop. And that's where, Martin, we got the name for the book for Carlotta and called it the pure drop, because those drawings, like she said, our pen was like a camera. It's sort of an essence. And the pure drop, of course, is an essence.
And even what's on the front there, people, just that wonderful of Joe Ward there, the late great Joe Ward there. That's a strong. I would have known Joe all my life. Deceased now, but a man that would have enjoyed music and song. And he was a listener as well as a player. And it captures him well there, just in context of listening around him. And you captured him just there, taking it all in, and happiness. His face is there. He's at one with himself. And that was a great decision. And throughout it, you know, from Tommy Peoples, you know, people remember the Tommy
Also
Peoples,
deceased
like,
now.
Also deceased Tommy. You know, it's just amazing. You know, from local, from Pat McManus to Mickey McDonald, Seamus Fair, wonderful Seamus Fair there. We'll have all these available. We'll put them up as slides. You can look at them. The book is now available. This is only what I nearly say, the work in progress, because what would be in this count-wise, number-wise?
There's about 40 drawings.
There's over 200 in the archive to be made public.
Yeah.
That's what we look at it from that. But beautifully finished,
printed right here in Cavan. By the way, the Granny Rose Murray in Lower Lavey, one day we were in there, and she said to us, she says, Chris, spend your money in Ireland. And she didn't want any money. She didn't need any money. But I took it as some sort of proper instruction. Invest in Ireland. Spend your money here where you are in Cavan. So when we came to print this book, we printed it here in Cavan at Harvest Moon Press, who we had worked with earlier with the arts office. With
hardback.
Yeah.
There's even a music and ring of it, Carlotta.
Martin, can I mention something about people like Joe Ward and our man playing the fiddle in there, Tommy Peoples. These people moved Carlotta and I. He had so much soul, this guy. In fact, this drawing looks like an American blues musician. All the old blues guys in America, like John Lee Hooker and Muddy Waters, they'd have a hat, and it really reminded me of the tradition in America of traditional music. It was very much related to the indigenous blues music, which combined English ballads and things and Irish Celtic music with what came out of America with the rural music in America. But these guys had so much soul, so much NYAH. I'll never forget when we first saw Tommy Peoples. I had never heard anybody play a fiddle like that. It was a mournful, soulful feeling. It was so expressive. You could feel the heartbeat of the man. And so for us to be able to have a relationship, if you will, via Carlotta's drawings and us being there and us exploring and discovering this, it was profound because it goes right to your soul. And so we're indebted to you, first of all, for welcoming us. You were the first person who ever said, welcome home. And that meant so much to me because I wanted to come. I was trying to find home, and we found it. And so that was important. But then all the musicians who by the way, they all delighted in the fact of Carlotta doing a drawing. And sometimes I'd go up to Tommy Peoples, and he'd still be on the stage finishing his gig, maybe packing his fiddle, and I'd show it to them, and
a lot of them autographed it.
Yeah, and everyone loved it. So this was a way for us to come to Cavan and to engage with the community in a dynamic and active way and try to give a little back. And that's, to tell you the truth, this book was made to give back to Cavan and to these musicians in our way of document, to show our appreciation for the tradition and how important it was to us, and to try to be a little piece of it. And so it was a profound experience for us. And during that process, the first flower was 2010, 11, 12. I married Carlotta on the family farm in County Cavan at the Holy Well. There's a mass rock 15 years ago this summer. So what year is that? 2005. So that was a great, exciting time leading up to the All Island Music Festival, but I have to tell for the record something, that when we decided to get married in Ireland, and we got married at the Holy Well there, and my dear friend Donovan, the legendary musical rock star Donovan, who did Mellow Yellow, Sunshine Superman, Catch the Wind, Season of the Witch, 16 top 10 hits. He came to that wedding, and Sean Nos, did a song, the St. Francis Prayer, and that was wonderful. But the reason I'm saying all this, we wanted to have a different kind of wedding, and having it outdoors there at the Mass Rock was kind of radical, and it was wonderful. And all the Murrays came from America, had to walk up the lane in Lower Lavie to get up there, and some of them were wearing their high heels and their fancy dresses, and they had no idea they were going to end up at Denton as well. And they loved it. But what I want to say is, when we went back to the reception at our home in Red Hills, where we put up a marquee, I had asked you if you could organize for us for the wedding traditional Irish music. And indeed, we did that. You did that. And you brought the Gagan sisters, and you brought Fimpton, and Trevor was there, and Mickey McDonald, and a whole gang of Irish musicians.
The dancers.
In Belturbet, we'd be exploring around, and one day we're up in Belturbet one early evening. We noticed in a big building at the top of the street, I think it was the courthouse or whatever it was, there were people dancing upstairs, young people. So Carlotta and I went in the back door and just peeked in. And it was the Sonia Leonard School of Irish Dance, and they were practicing, and that made an impression on us. We saw them, and when we decided to get married, I said, why don't we see if we can get some Sonia Leonard dancers? So I contacted Sonia Leonard, and I said, is there some way we could get a bunch of dancers to come to the wedding and perform, and I could make a donation to the school or something? And Sonia Leonard arranged a beautiful thing. Actually, the money went to each of the kids, is what she did with the money. And they came out, I'll never forget, in a row, according to height, there were 2 or 3 little 6-year-olds, and went right up. And you know what I loved? All the mothers who brought the kids to that came. So they were all at our wedding reception, just as observers, and it was wonderful because the community was in on our wedding too. It wasn't just the family, and I'll never forget when they came out. I think it was about 21 of them coming out in a little row. I remember the audience, especially the Yanks. They all went, they were so impressed, and then your music and everybody entertaining them. It was the biggest. There's been my family. It's a big family. We've had a lot of these big Yank weddings. They all said nothing was as good as this. And the traditional Irish music and dance was at the heart of our wedding. And even Donovan who was a traditional master himself, who's playing tomorrow with Martin Hayes at some event down in Bantry. And so not only did the tradition was something we were enjoying in the Farnham or at a festival, it came into our life. It was right there at our wedding. Traditional Irish music.
And I also got to meet people like the wonderful Joey that travels home. Joey's a great friend of Carlotta and Chris's. And
well, Martin, you're right. They're talking a lot about the diaspora and all that, and a lot of Yanks came over for this.
We met Melissa and your brother, Mammy. Mammy came over. Where are you from yourself, Carlotta?
I grew up in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Wow. And so one thing I wanted to add to all of this is the second we met Alice McDermott, who's this incredible writer who we adore. She wrote Charming Billy, The Ninth Hour, many things. She's been nominated for a Faulkner Award. She's won 2 other awards.
The National Book Award, the America's National Book Award.
This is respected.
She is a fantastic writer, and we had the pleasure of meeting her at the Radisson Farnham. And because her son, he was playing
her two sons were traditional Irish musicians.
And we were sitting there having a meal. We started chatting. We got to know her. We then went around and saw her sons playing. And we were so honored that she wrote a foreword in our book. So
and beautifully written, both awards.
Beautiful piece.
She refers to traditional Irish music, and people make it as, well, she quotes Yeats, as the real aristocrats, because they don't put up with the passing or the frivolous. That's what lasts, is the tradition. The passing and frivolous is gone. And so Yeats had this idea about the real aristocrats, the traditional artists, because it sustains and it remains. And so,
You also done a wonderful connection. Just back on Alice's thought of it, and when you're talking about the art, you made Donovan happen. Both you and Carlotta managed to get Donovan to come to Ballyjames Duff to the museum. That was a memorable event in our world because we got to share the stage with him. And for so many people in our tradition, we'd never met him. We mellow yellow, it catch the wind. But I mean, this man was coming to Ballyjames Duff, and you made that happen.
it was
It was a
thrilling.
wonderful Katrina Riley, Savina Donohoe from the Cavan County Council Arts Office and Museum. They just were blown away at the time. And again, I remember we got a special dome set up. Kevin Smith and the team worked on that. It was an amazing event, a night to remember.
It was thrilling, and the great
That
thing,
happened.
and that evening, before Donovan performed, you and Sean O'Shea and an array of Irish traditional musicians, I'll never forget, on the stage in the marquee that was set up in Ballyjames Duff at the Cavan Museum, when you guys were all up there doing the music and
Warming it up.
the
the
and
crowd.
it was an amazing 3 days of events. But that was the peak of it, and Donovan walking in with his wife Linda, and sitting there and enjoying from the first row
Yeah.
all the music that you and your colleagues were performing, and then he came up and had a great set, and he loved it, and he fell in love with Cavan after that. He's been up to visit quietly Cavan several
And
times.
I met him myself without you. He's on the visits. He's given me a call, and we met up. And a great friend of mine, Sean Boyle, a fan. Like, I mean, he's a tradesman. Couldn't believe he had the chance to meet Donovan. You know, and get a
That's right.
photograph at the Kilmore Hotel with him. You know, so.
And I have to say, the other person I met first in Cavan was Katrina O'Reilly, and I'm in the art business. I've been in the art business for over 40 years, and a gallery in Washington for 35 of those years, and doing wonderful things there with all sorts of visual artists. So one of the first years we were here, I saw there was the arts office on
Farnham Street.
on Farnham
Right.
Street, and it wasn't in the big building as it is now. It was a small little alley kind of place, and I just said, I'm going to go in there and see what's going on. And there was the most charming, engaging, beautiful woman, Katrina Riley, and I just introduced ourselves to her, and that led to a really, really wonderful relationship, and where we collaborated with Katrina on a number of things, and which also led to us getting to know Zoran Donohoe, the director of the museum in Ballyjames Duff. And actually, when we got married, there was an exhibition of Carlotta's wonderful, not those drawings, but a series of prints she did called Elemental Journey, which were collages and also drawings and all sort of things. It was a wonderful show, and Savina presented that show at the museum there, and I was very proud because my cousin Jerry Murray, who lives now on the farm, it's his home, with his brother Jimmy, and who has been so kind to us on our return to home. Jerry was he was a Cavan County councilman, but
With the gold.
Well, the
Yes.
the
Yeah.
chairman.
he was the chairman.
The
Thank you.
Comhairle. The Comhairle.
He was the Comhairle, and he came, and what a pleasure to see him launch the exhibit for us. And
That's great.
so that was a real coming home, to find my beloved cousin Jerry, to
You've
find the
You've
farm.
made your footprint, you know. That's why it's important just for this project here that we're capturing the story of Chris and Carlotta, you know. We're part of Cavan County Council's archive. Again, thanks to Katrina Riley, who's alive and well, working in the arts. We should mention at this stage we're in the middle of a COVID lockdown. This lovely book would have been launched at the Ulster Cavan in Cavan Town in July, but unfortunately here we are in August, and Fla Ulla was cancelled at numerous events throughout the world, all due to the wonderful fear and effects and the deaths that came through the COVID. And so we all know somebody associated with it. So while we're very close together here, we've been in great friendship for the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's isolated when he came home from America for 2 weeks, and then we met up after. So we've been working very closely. But for people watching, Ireland has a changed place this year. This was, you had planned to have a little exhibition space in Cavan during July.
We were going to surprise you with
You had
a
surprise.
Well, this was a surprise. And in fact, when we did the
I knew
book,
nothing about this book.
when we did the book, nobody did. I told the printer, I said, there's one Turlock, lovely man, and Mark, the designer, I said, there's one caveat. You have to keep it a secret. I don't want anyone to know we're doing this book, because I wanted to just present it for Carlotta and to Carlotta, but then present it to you and all our...
Well, you're giving it to the county. The
Thank you,
book
Martin.
itself is in the library. It's going to be available to view in the Irish Traditional Music Archive. And the director up there met just the wonderful Liam O'Connor and his team up in Marion Square. Has met Carlotta
wonderful,
Chris.
man.
Martin, I have to tell you how
Wonderful.
thrilling it was to see the library at the Irish Traditional Music Archive in Marion Row. This is an amazing place that I encourage anyone, if they're in Dublin, just knock on the door. It's open to the public. And if you have any interest in music or Irish culture, that library is an oasis. You could go in there and sit down and look at every book you could want, but it's about Irish traditional music, but obviously that goes beyond that to every aspect of Irish life in a way, because the people who created this music have lives, have stories, have families, and so not only do you get the music, you get all the variety of experience in Ireland and
it's available there freely. ITMA is the short we call it. Irish Traditional Music Archive is very easy to find. Virtually, all the events happen this year, so virtually you can visit them and see videos. They'll also get a copy of this for their archives as well. You've got wonderful endorsement from Comhaltas Culture, Dr. Laura Sumuraku has received copies, and we will have a feature in Troll magazine, our magazine for 35,000 members. Again, Comhaltas played a large part in the Flag Show because that's their event. We were lucky to host it. The NYAH is behind us here. If we look at our banners there, thanks to the NYAH group of people, and as our mission statement says, it's about sharing our culture and about having safer areas, cultural areas. And Cavan County Council again will make this available for us so that we can come along and store this wonderful interview, and also we'll make it available freely for people to listen back and hear the story of a living tradition. Carlotta's an artist, I'm an artist, Chris is an arts management. Between us, we made a living tradition. And this book is only, hopefully now, we're already planning that we'll bring to, over the year, we'll work on a project to bring the other 160 odd pieces of wonderful art done by Carlotta to the public.
And Martin, I'm glad you mentioned Labras, because we met him at the FLA. We didn't know who he was. But
he also came to the show at Trans Art that Joe Keenan.
That's what I wanted to
Great.
go ahead.
So,
You mention it.
Right, so Joe Keenan arranged a whole bevy of shows during the third FLA. And so at the Johnson Library, there was a great room where I had my drawings, many that are in here, and we met the senator at the time.
Well, we had seen him before that at various events you were having, and he was such a gentleman, and his beautiful wife. Mm-hmm. And so we found them to be very lovely people to engage with, and it was a great kick for us in the 2012 FLA for him to come to the opening of that exhibit at the library, at the Johnson Library, and kudos to Joe Keenan for organizing that, because
it was very visionary at the time to include such art event with the blessing of Cavan County Council, with the blessing of Katrina Riley in the Arts Office. And of course, we also remember we had a launch plan for this on the 9th of August in Cavan. And due to the COVID restrictions again, we done it open air. We had a lovely event on the Market Square in Cavan. We have some lovely photographs from the event. Some videos are up on the NYAH County Cavan Facebook page. But again, on the day we received a beautiful text from the past county manager from Cavan, and also the chair of the Flag Shows in Cavan, Jack Keys. And Jack and Julie live in Offaly, and as I told Chris and Claude at the time, Jack sent a lovely text saying the lockdown had been put on Kildare and Offaly and Laois that very weekend. So the government had locked down the three counties, and he couldn't travel to Cavan, and he was ready and steady to turn up to meet us and to share the pleasure he had, which is over those years in Cavan, and wish you the very best with this wonderful publication. So
nice.
We'll have to sign a copy and get it down to Julie and Jack Keys. Great people who supported this. And again, all the committee, they're voluntary in Comhaltas, people are voluntary. And we were very lucky that through professional musicians that attended, allowed you to take their piece of art and capture them. And as I say, they were very happy, as Chris has said that when he went up to them afterwards. And Paul Flynn from the Arts Council, he also has a copy up there in the Irish Traditional Music Arts Department of the Arts Council of Ireland. So Paul Flynn will have that in the resources as well for other people to view in that. But again, it was a wonderful journey from the wedding. That was like a FLA. That was the first FLA, really. I always say the wedding was the first FLA.
I like that.
We excited ourselves and you met you made friends forever. From the Gagan family to Claire McDermott, you've gone to Bonby and visited
We
Claire.
love Claire.
You've been to Belturbet, you've been to Cotillion. We wish Mickey McDonald well in his new building.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful friend. He's in the book. He has a new pub on the market, so he has the Ramblin' House in Cotillion. And we'll probably have a book launch there. It's available in Easons in Cavan Town. It's available in Easons. It's also available for our American audience. You can purchase it through the email or art gallery.
That's right. GovindaGallery.com.
Govinda, spell that for our audience. Just
Govinda, Govinda Gallery, www.govindagallery.com.
mean,
But you can order it in America from our email, popart, that's one word, Popart, popart@govindagallery.com. Very easy, popart@govindagallery.com.
and again, thanks to radio, we have great stories with Shannonside Northern Sound. Again, the Wind That Blows is off air at the moment, just with the COVID and the weekend restrictions.
But I have to
and travel.
interrupt you for 1 minute. I have to tell you that when we're in America now, and there's a lot of talk about diaspora and bringing, celebrating people returning and things. But when I'm home in America, and I'm very lonely for Cavan, and I'm very lonely for my friends here and our loved ones and my family, I turn on your show. In America, I think I have to put it on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you come on, and whether it's wintertime or springtime, I tune into that show, and on the computer, I have to put the laptop, and it's so wonderful to hear. It's so wonderful. I even enjoy hearing the ads because it'll be for a local Cavan company, and to hear what you do, and Fintan McManus's theme
The Wind That
for
Blows.
the Wind That Blows, and the way you present, well-known Irish traditional musicians as well as up-and-comers, and it's a great, great show, and I hope the community in Cavan supports the Wind That Blows and supports traditional Irish music. And a lot of talk about diaspora and everything, but I have to say, even in America, people's perception of Ireland is very much focused on traditional Irish music. They think, when they think of Ireland, they think of the traditional Irish music. That's what they're hearing in their heads. They might also think of golf. They might also think of Guinness beer. They might also think of their lineage and their heritage here. But I have to tell you, if anyone's serious about the diaspora and encouraging people to come back in this, we've got to promote traditional Irish music, because that's what the Yanks really want to hear in their hearts. And thanks, Martin, for everything you've done. Thanks for everything you've done personally in our lives, and you're wonderful. I have to mention the most exciting part for us was getting to know people from this, whether it would be Tommy Peebles, or whether it be your family, who are all wonderful traditional Irish musicians, or your wonderful wife, Angela. Just to meet so many people, and to have, we literally have friends with so many people here now, and it's all because of that medium of music.
Sharon.
And
Sharon, you shared your time with us, and I always remember Carlotta was always generous, whether it's down to the new generation of NYAHs, the O'Reillys, whether it's Emily, Charlie or Hannah, whether it's the Duffys dancing, whether it's the Three Boys, whether it's the Curran family. Carlotta's the teacher. She comes through, she smiles, and it'll be very late at night.
You two have a big connection, because you're a teacher, she's a teacher, and when I first came to that session, there were these adult guys, who had this band, and then you'd see it all develop, and over the years, and other people come and go, but to see, in the last few years, to see the NYAH Comhaltas assemblies on Wednesday there and in other times, and to see the new group of young musicians coming up, I love it as much as seeing the masters.
We have 20 years. This would have been our 20th birthday of NYAH. And for any of our visitors from not alone Americans, NYAH is just that feeling or groove that you have in Irish music, the NYAH. And I always said, Chris Murray especially, because he's the vocalist of the two, Carlotta would be quiet in the background, but he had the NYAH when I first met him. He had the NYAH, and Carlotta, of course, understands it and captured it. And that's what the book is about, the NYAH, that feeling or lift. In blues music, you say the soul, but in Irish traditional music, you have the NYAH. So that's what we're about there. Thanks again to our lovely, as I say, Cavan Arts, We'll have this all available to view and watch and find information on ordering the book in case you missed it. Thanks again to the Department of Culture, Heritage and the Gaeltacht who support traditional music, and the Arts Council and Comhaltas.
And of course, Martin, the symbol of Ireland is a harp. And
there we are.
That's why I placed Carlotta's harp. That's Carlotta's rendering of the Irish harp right there. And I kind of love it. I think it's a lovely little monogram on the back of the book, you know.
And Cavan Town, when we were during the festival, his harp was beautiful.
Yeah, the harp. Again, the friendships and the memories. Your visit's nearly over for this year. Carlotta returns to America at the weekend when we're recording this to work back into the busy world of virtual teaching.
Right.
Where in Ireland we're trying to deal with live teaching and the question marks over rooms and spaces and buses and allocation of children to room ratio. You're online for till January anyway, and of course that involves lots of technical work, and we're glad that we have this format here simply to record it and have it available. Thanks to Zoran Donohoe, who's on camera duty today for us.
We love Zoran.
She's on technical work for us, and again to all the people in the background, Daniel Peters from the Arts Office who will work with us as well in this, and Paul Farnan to do the technical stuff. And as I say, we all work together. I'm just so glad this is here. In 50 years from now, I'm not going to be definitely here unless there's a new tablet made, but definitely I'll not be. But this book will be. This book will be here. The Pure Drop, Carlotta Hester, and as I say, it's beautifully done. All explained very simply there. From your Danny O'Mahony's to Padraig McGovern's, these are all legends of the tradition. You have Oisin McDermott and Noel Carroll. You have a lovely feature there from Sean O'Shea, the Ed Reevy concert. You have the Flavan, some lovely snaps there. Carlotta herself is featured in it.
And Carlotta's drawing is on Darren Maloney, your friend Darren Maloney. The late Darren.
Darren was a great lover of Carlotta, who in return done a beautiful CD cover for Darren. And I know at the time the family were all touched the fact that this lovely American artist provided for his second album the cover, and that came from Carlotta of Darren. He just loved your work because you'd been in America, you'd met him with Vonnie Quinn, he knew the music and he loved you, so he did. So again, featured well here along with all the young and old. This is a wonderful collection. In years to come you'll have this, and it's just one of these keepers. Look at our good friend Trevor Bury there. We're not too far from where Trevor grew up here now at the moment here in County Cavan. And again, he lives in Cotillo, but I know he'd just be chuffed because he understands how good you are, Carlotta. And as I say, from Eugene Keevan to Joe Ward to the Tierney brothers there, Chris Stout from Shetland Islands, Katrina McKay is featured there, the wonderful Pat McManus and Larry Nugent, who's over there, Bernadette Gowan, who has a wonderful Instagram page you can follow. And there's lovely budget, but one of the special ones there is our lovely friend Darren Maloney there, and featured so well there. Just captured him. He was a quiet genius because he didn't push it in your face. If you hadn't the ears, you didn't hear it. And my God, he had it. So we miss Darren all the time. Thanks again to Alice McDermott, who put the icing on the cake. Alice done a wonderful foreword there. But Chris Murray, you pushed ahead and you made this happen. And I thank you. And Carlotta Hester, your talent, that's what it is. I couldn't draw a bar of soap, as the fella says.
And your inspiration.
Well, the NYAH's about that.
And that's why I have to say, wait, this book, by the way, is dedicated right here. I love this drawing Carlotta did. This Martin's the only one in the drawing is not with it. We associate Martin with his music, but here's Martin in the Wind That Blows, live doing a show. Carlotta was up in the studio, sketched him while he was putting on the music, and so we dedicated it to Martin Donohoe.
Who welcomed us into this world.
I don't have my glasses on. Thank you.
Welcomed us into this world of traditional Irish music, and it is a world. It's your world now as well because you understand it. And of course, Chris, while this book is important, you go back to America because in your other life you've been involved in world productions of amazing books as well, from all the greats. From I love the photograph of you with Muhammad Ali. You've worked on that book. And
well, Martin, coming out September 29th is my 20th book, and it's on a great Irishman named George Harrison. Of course, the lead guitar for the Beatles. It features Barry Feinstein's photo of George's first 3 solo albums, which sold tens of millions of copies. But you know, George is Irish, his mother's Irish. Wow. And he would return to Ireland, and he loved it here. And he came on personal visits and to see his cousins. I think his mother's name was French, her last name, but she was all Irish. And so you know, 3 of the 4 Beatles are Irish. McCartney, Lennon, Harrison. They're all Irish descent. And so, you know.
So this is a big book on a big label, a big company.
Rizzoli. And it's called George Harrison, Be Here Now.
Wow.
So I might add not only the Beatles, but none other than the great Bob Dylan, who just got the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago. He was very much influenced by what he called rebel music, traditional Irish music. The Clancy brothers were a big thing in 1961 in New York City when he arrived at Greenwich Village, and Dylan was wearing the Irish sweater. And I did a book on those early years of Bob Dylan in New York when he first arrived, from 61 to 64. And the Gallery of Photography in Ireland, in Temple Bar, Ireland's national photo gallery of contemporary photography, did a wonderful exhibit of these early photos of Bob Dylan because it demonstrated his being influenced by traditional Irish music and English ballads and that sort of thing. Well, the museum and the terrific directors, Trish Lamb and Tanya Kiang, recognized in Carlotta's drawings something spontaneous about them, almost like a photograph. And that's when Carlotta's statement, "My pen was like a camera," it all came together because the Gallery of Photography in Temple Bar included Carlotta's drawings of the traditional Irish musicians in that exhibit. Dylan was on the first floor, and then Carlotta by Ted Russell. Thank you, Carlotta. By Ted Russell, who's 90 years old now, who was a great photographer of Life magazine, the gold standard in America, and he photographed Dylan those years, and it's his photos in the book. But so there's a Ted Russell exhibit of Bob Dylan's photos at the Gallery of Photography, and they included Carlotta's drawings of traditional Irish musicians in that show, which was remarkable because it features photography. But since Carlotta said my pen was like a camera, it was a wonderful connection they made there. And so I remember, Martin, you and Angela came down to the opening, and it was a big deal, and it was a wonderful show and very successful, and Dublin really loved the opportunity to see Dylan, and we're lovely surprised by that. But through that friendship I developed with Tanya and Trish, they contacted me about another project that they just completed a few months ago, and it's called the Photo Album of the Irish. And they call it the US edition. And what they did is they gathered personal photo albums from Americans who were in America that might have had photos of their ancestors in Ireland, and then it shows the transition to America. So this is kind of the ultimate diaspora book because it documents Americans who are Irish and their parents and their families and their cousins who came from here.
The Murray clan?
And I'm happy to tell you, I saved many of the photos from my own family's personal archive, and they included a chapter on the Murray family, and right there is Matthew Murray from Cavan, when he first arrived in New York as a young 15-year-old lad, and there he is again in a formal studio portrait after he met and married Mary Mansell, my grandmother. So that's my grandfather from Cavan, my grandmother from Kerry, and then it goes on to then show their children. My father, Matthew Murray, he's not in this picture, but there are his 6 children. And so this is a terrific project.
It's yourself with the music.
There's my, as a young man in New York with my Elvis albums, when I, and most people don't know, Elvis was very much influenced by traditional music, because the music Bill Monroe and the Country Gentlemen and all these people, they were traditional American music based on Irish music. So even Elvis, by the way, who traces his roots to Ireland as well, the Mansells, that's my father, Matthew Murray, who was the son of Matthew Murray from Cavan. My mother, who her parents are also Irish descent. All 4 of my grandparents are from Ireland. Her family were Cork and Galway, but they were a generation before. Okay. And it's a lot harder when you're out a couple of generations. With my father, he was first generation, his parents born in Ireland. I was able to find those documents and actually ended up becoming an Irish citizen, Martin, through that. And it shows my son, who would be a grandson of an Irishman, Matthew Murray, and the great-grandson of Matthew Murray from Cavan. And there he is with First Man on the Moon, Buzz Aldrin, because Buzz came to my gallery because I had a Andy Warhol exhibit. And there's
Great
Muhammad
photograph,
Ali.
my favourite photograph there. Chris there with Muhammad Ali.
And we all know Ali also has Irish roots. But anyway, the photo
Great.
book of the Irish, the photo album of the Irish, which was from the Gallery of Photography right there in Temple Bar. And it was wonderful that we were able to have a connection because they were the first museum to show Carlotta's work. And then this book we became part of too.
And you have some great friends in America from the arts world as well, from the Irish government side, and different people in power that have great love of the world.
Michael Collins, who is your ambassador to Washington, brilliant man. He launched the Pure Drop exhibit in Washington at Govinda Gallery. He came, we had Irish dancers there, and he and his wonderful wife, Marie, they launched the exhibit there. And now Dan Mullahall is your ambassador at Washington. He's a remarkable man. He's a poet, and he's a great lover of the arts. And we're hoping to have a launch in Washington of the Pure Drop at the Irish Embassy once COVID in America calms down, because now all that's closed down too. The embassy's closed, and they're cultural. They have a beautiful new culture building, and that's closed too. But you know, the Irish music will never stop.
It's in the heart. Again, thanks very much, Chris and Carlotta.
Thank you, Martin.
That was our universal farewell. We'll have to use that for the camera.
Cheers.
There you are. Great to have you. And as I say, we want you back. Please God, we'll have a 2021 to look forward to. And keep safe. Say hello to Mammy Melissa.
Will do.
And all the family. And of course, big Joey. I love Joey. Miss seeing Joey this year. Great friend of yours. Great friend of ours. It's great heart in him. And of course, all the people. I know I'm an invitation to be in the Catskills. Ray Dean has us over there in 2022. So our paths may cross in between in America. But more importantly, the Pure Drop is there forever. And it's a footprint. It's a large footprint in our tradition. And it'll be received as it is already by renowned artists who are saying, wow. So, as you say in America, awesome. They're absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. God bless.